According to the hype, every new mountain bike to hit the market these days is going to be lighter and stronger than the previous model. It climbs better, and naturally it delivers you back to the bottom of the mountain again, ready for another run, much better than the previous incarnation. The trouble is, there's so many different types of mountain biking now, and we're talking bikes that are fully rigid lightweights all the way through to 200mm travel rock swallowing brutes. And that can make narrowing down the right choice for you quite difficult. Now, I've always been searching for the one bike that I need, the quiver killer, the jack of all trades, and I've never managed to find the right style bike. But I think I might have just found a solution. We've all heard the jack of all trades, master of none phrase, right? Well, what you might not have heard is the full phrase, which actually says, jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. And actually, I think this can ring true with bikes. It is a compliment, by the way. So I love cross-country bikes, but they are quite specialist. And there are things with limitations about the way they ride. And I also love enduro bikes. But again, there are limitations unless you particularly like riding around on a massive travel bike that can numb some terrain. Now, what I look for in a bike is a trail bike, something with a little bit shorter travel than an enduro bike, a tough frame, but still nice and lightweight, agile, responsive feel to it, something that's good enough to ride all day, but something to give me a bit of confidence back. Now, I've been searching for this type of bike since the mid-90s when I started venturing away from cross-country and looking at sort of more fun riding, jumping, playing around, but obviously something you could ride all day long. I went through Giant ATX 970s, 990s, ATX 1000s, Kona Stinkys, and then even sort of varied over towards four-cross style bikes in search of something a bit tougher. Cruz Blur four-cross was incredible and great as a trail bike, even though the size large was a little small for me. I then moved on to the Commencal Meta 4, Meta 5, and more recent times, of course, my beloved Nukeproof Reactor. Brilliant bike, but there's something about this bike, the Spectral 125, so that's 140 on the front, 125 on the rear, that made me think a bit differently recently, because even with burly alloy wheels on here with Vibracore and sturdy trail tyres, this one, as you see it, minus the water bottle, weighs almost 31 pounds dead on. That is easily light enough for like big all-day rides, but also it's tough enough and it's confidence inspiring enough to hit most things that I like to ride. I do have the luxury of having a bigger travel bike, but this really is the bread and butter. Now, a little while back, I built that Yeti cross-country bike, but I built it with a 120mm fork and burlier wheels with burlier tyres, if you remember. And it kind of made me think, because the weight difference wasn't significantly different to a bike like this. I thought, what if I try this with cross-country wheels? Could I get two bikes in one? I get a trail bike and a cross-country bike without having to have a second bike. How's it going to handle with the lighter wheels on there? And, well, generally, how's it going to be? So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to put my super light cross-country wheels on this bike and run it back to back with these. We're going to see what the differences are and see if that actually makes a justifiable quiver killer, jack of all trades bike. So the bike as it is, a Canyon Spectral 125, obviously 125mm travel on the rear, 140 on the front, 29-inch wheels front and rear, are both Spank. They're both Spank Vibracores with a 350 on the front and a 359 on the rear. Tyres, Vittoria Mazza, it's a trail casing, 2.4. So the front wheel, minus the disc rotor, weighs 2.16 kilogram, and the rear, minus the rotor and the cassette on there, 2.49 kilograms. And now these are the cross-country wheels that I normally run on my Canyon Lux. So these are substantially lighter. So they're E13 XCX, so these are carbon rims. And although they're cross-country, these are like the cross-country trail. So they're 28mm wide, whereas the out-and-out race ones are 24. The tyres, though, are exceptionally light. They're Vittoria Barzo XC Race. So the front wheel, 1.55 kilograms, and the rear, 1.67. And the total weight difference it makes to the bike is obviously quite significant. So as it is with the trail setup, is 14.13 kilograms, which is 31.15 pounds. And with the XC setup, it's 12.87 kilograms or 28.37 pounds. A significant difference, and that is all in rolling weight. So I'm really interested to see how the bike is going to handle with the super light wheels on. So we're going to start there because I know it so well as it is. I want the surprise of running it with the super lights first. So let's have a little feel, shall we? Now I just need to sort of get a feel of it because I'm not sure what levels of traction available to me yet. Okay, so there is less traction, but feels quite calm because of the geometry. That's cool. Oh, hello. So I know from riding this on my cross-country bike, it's a little bit of a struggle to be fair, but that's quite nice. Be interesting when we're on the rockier and the rootier stuff, see what difference it makes. You definitely have to ride differently on the cross-country bike. I've got the first kind of little climb coming up. Up through some rocks here. You can hear things flexing because the wheels are so light compared to the burly trail wheels. You can feel the knobbles scratching for grip already, just on the edges of the rocks. So something I'm noticing instantly on this is there's obviously far less grip with the cross-country tyres on a bike like this, but because they spin up to speed so much faster than the trail wheels, you're kind of sliding out on turns, but you can get back to speed like nearly instantly. It's like it almost feels a bit like a four-cross bike. I absolutely love how it feels, even though I'm scratching for grip. I mean, it's kind of to be expected, but I think the really interesting thing that I'm finding is because it's got quite a slack head angle and quite aggressive geometry compared to the cross-country bike, when it slides, it kind of understeers and you're not really that concerned about it. It's kind of fun. Like, I think you can push them quite hard, but obviously what I've been riding mostly here are the sort of trails that I would still ride on a cross-country bike, just a bit differently. You couldn't go too hard with tyres like this because you're obviously going to puncture them. I'm not trying to suggest that you can. I'm just trying to ride in places that I would ride my cross-country bike, but I am riding it really quite differently. There's no traction right there where I need it. This reminds me why I don't ride this that much on the cross-country bike, to be fair. Because the mixture of surfaces, you really need to rely on your brakes and stuff here. Now, my aim of this experiment isn't to try and ride gnarly stuff on cross-country tyres. It's basically just to see if I can have kind of two bikes for one. A bike that can do big days out, you know, you're really putting in the miles and covering ground like you would on a cross-country bike, and then my regular trail bike. Now, I ride through this woods quite a lot and I do it on all sorts of bikes, including my cross-country bike. But trails like this one, I tend to avoid because they're pretty slippery and scary on the position of a cross-country bike and the combination with those tyres and the brakes, of course, which when you're pretty heavy like me, like 92, 93 kilos, little 160mm rotors don't do a lot. So what you might not be able to see is there's loads of small chunks of limestone behind me. And when it's just a little bit moist, your little safety areas where you go use the brakes, you can't really do that because you're sliding around. Now, what I've noticed in riding this, yeah, the tyres are still sliding around, but a combination of the suspension giving you a bit more traction and the geometry calming things down actually makes the trail quite rideable even on these tyres. Now, I probably wouldn't choose to ride it on this trail because I don't want to slash the tyres and it's not my intention, but it's pretty fascinating to find out that even with tyres with barely any grip for this type of terrain, it's quite rideable. Oh my God, no grip whatsoever. Okay, and rimming out through there as well. You know, I think that's close to the limits of the tyres, to be honest. So I'm fully on the brakes coming through this stuff. And it is slippy, it is pretty steep, steeper than it looks. But on the trail tyres, the trail wheels, combo the big brakes, you've got plenty of grip and plenty of support to do that. This is a little bit too far. I mean, like I said, this isn't a trail that I tend to ride that much on a cross-country bike, but it is still kind of fun, and working the way to the bottom, you just get further and further out of control. And as you probably just seen on that clip, I'm just like, that's the limit of this setup. And that's fine by me because, as intended, I wasn't going to be riding this stuff, but it's good to know just how far you can push this sort of stuff. But I've got to say, even though the tyres are struggling for grip, the brakes don't affect it as much as I thought, and I think that's testament just to the combination of bigger rotors and the suspension. Whereas if you were to just put bigger rotors with your cross-country spec wheels on your cross-country bike, due to the weight, you're just going to lock it up the whole time. So suspension makes a huge difference in available traction, even with tyres that don't have much. The fork on the front's got 140mm travel, which, all right, it's only 20mm more than on a cross-country bike, but I shouldn't need to tell you how different the two feel. Like, that feels like you could ride into anything, whereas a cross-country bike feels like you've got to nurse it a bit more, even with that 120. Now, when you get out the saddle on this to put the power down, it moves around a bit, and it's obviously nowhere near as efficient as a cross-country bike, but it makes you want to go. Like, it really makes you want to go, and that's kind of good and bad. It's great because it's fun, but bad because you're going to push the limits of tyres like this. Now, I've got these on a bike like this for a reason, because I think that this could replace my cross-country bike for where I like to ride. I'm getting more confidence out of the fast rolling tyres, and certain times a year I just won't ride the cross-country bike on certain trails because of how it feels, whereas I actually reckon I'd be more inclined to on this. And I don't think I would overpower the tyres. I think I would ride them respectfully. I want to ride them for a long day and enjoy that lightweight feel, and this so far is doing it. I tell you what, this is really where this setup is starting to shine. So this bike weighing around 28 pounds with the super light wheels on it, it's so easy to climb up stuff. Now, it's not just about the lack of rotating weight I've got, it's about the geometry on the bike. So on the cross-country bike, I've got a slacker seat angle, so it puts my weight with a further bias to the rear wheel. On this bike, steeper seat angle, it's closer to the middle of the bike. So essentially that, combined with the slightly more travel than my cross-country bike, I've just got more grip and a better position for climbing. I've got to say, this does climb better than a cross-country bike, at least on technical stuff where you've got to be seated. And to be fair, that's a lot of my riding. Okay, quite surprising. I think they're performing really well. At the same time though, it's amazing what you get used to, and I know this from years of testing bikes. So what I'm going to do now is pedal back up to the top and have another run straight to the bottom, swap the wheels over, and then go again with the regular trail wheels on there. And it should give me a pretty good indication of just how different the two setups are. Okay, so I've just put the trail wheels back on with the trail tyres that I'm familiar with. And obviously the first thing I noticed is that, yeah, there is a substantial weight difference. Like I said at the beginning of the video, around 3 pounds or so. You notice it initially when you get on a bike and accelerate. They feel way slower to accelerate. But once rolling, it's not too bad. I mean, I haven't just ridden across the same terrain here on the other wheels just to test. I'm pedaling to a trailhead at the moment. And that's a pretty good representation of places I ride. I'll use sections of towpath or perhaps country lane to join sections of trail. And what I noticed earlier on when I was riding actually on tarmac on the other tyres is they were so fast. And it's highlighted the fact that I'm actually running a different tyre setup to what I would usually run on my trail bike. This time of year I tend to run a faster rolling rear tyre for exactly the reasons why I'm trying this experiment in the first place. But I'm interested to get into the woods though and actually feel how much difference it makes in terms of grip and how sure-footed the bike is. Let's get to it, shall we? Oh, way slower to accelerate. Almost had to change down the gear to. The grip is another level different though. But I just might prefer the feel of the cross-country wheels through here, you know. Now, I'm actually quite partial to a bit of a nasty climb, and I'll tell you what, those cross-country wheels, I'm sure I was going so much quicker through here. And little things where you've got to make an acceleration just to get up a bank was just day and night easier on the lighter wheels. Now, there's a few things at hand here. Obviously the lighter wheels, just the rolling inertia is just totally different, but I've got more traction with these, so it's way easier to actually pedal up that, but I've got to make a lot more effort to gain that momentum. I don't think I even changed speed when I was going up there on the cross-country wheels. There's definitely something good going on with those lighter wheels. And this is where the traction of a trail tyre wheel combo comes in. And there's literally no comparison. So you might say it's unfair to ride both setups on the same thing, but The fact is I ride the same trail on my cross-country bike as part of a bigger loop, and I bring my trail bike here and just do sessioning basically. So coming down this on the sort of hard compound cross-country tyres, you're literally scratching for grip. I mean, it's not even nice to walk down, to be honest, because there's all these little sniper chunks of limestone that are trying to pull you away from the jump there. And actually, you'll probably see my line, along with a lot of other riders' lines, it pulls you this way, and that's pretty much the direction I've gone on a cross-country bike, but you can actually cut into this on the trail tyres comfortably, and not even considering it, and then just off this fly-off here. It's literally day and night, the difference between the two. And you know, that's actually kind of surprising given how good and how comfortable I was on the cross-country tyres everywhere else in the woods. But when it comes to this stuff, yeah, there's no comparison. And now that steeper, more technical trail with the trail setup. Let's see how this feels. And at no point so far is this feeling dodgy. Totally different. That's just like a little whistle downhill compared to riding it with the XC tyres. But again, completely different from running it on the XC bike, which is absolutely terrifying. Awesome. Okay, pretty interesting day out on the trails there. So what have I learnt then? Has this turned into a jack of all trades? Yeah, actually I'd say it has done. I've got a bike that suits probably 90% of what I like to do on a mountain bike, except for the cross-country missions. And actually by putting the lighter weight wheels on there, it achieved nearly as much as I can get out of my cross-country bike, which actually for me, that's probably good enough. So would I do it again? Yeah, 100%. I would probably change the suspension setup on the bike, probably run maybe 20% sag rather than the 30 that I've got on there at the moment, just to make it feel a little bit tighter. And maybe drop the brake levers to a bit more of a non-gravity biased angle on them. But other than that, yeah, I 100% want to try getting some miles in on the lighter setup, because I reckon that it has added to the potential of what that bike can do, and I think it's great. So hopefully this will have given you some ideas on things that you can do to your bike at home to try and get more out of it, whether it's a cross-country bike and putting some burlier tyres on perhaps, or if you've got an enduro race bike with 4-ply tyres or dual-ply tyres perhaps, putting some lighter tyres and even just an insert on the rear just to get the bike to feel a bit more agile again might give you a bit more benefit out on the trails. Either way, a good trailside experiment, I think. And if you've got any more ideas for me on Jekyll and Hyde style approaches on bikes, let us know in the comments underneath, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.